My name is Eliza. I was 29 years old. I lived in a small flat with my husband. His name was Thomas. We had been married for 4 years. I worked at a dental clinic as a receptionist. Thomas worked as a private driver. He drove people to meetings, parties, and business events. We lived in a quiet town. Our street was calm. We did not have many friends. We liked our quiet life, or so I believed. Each morning I woke up early. I made tea, toast, and eggs. I got dressed and took the bus to work. I came home by 6 in the evening. I was always tired, but I felt happy when I saw Thomas. He used to smile at me when I came home. He used to kiss my cheek and ask about my day. I made dinner and we ate together. We watched TV after dinner. It was a normal life. After some time, things started to change. At first, it was small. Thomas stopped eating dinner with me. He said he had already eaten. He said he was not hungry. He started coming home later than before. I asked if everything was okay. He said his work was busy. He said he had more night trips. I believed him. I did not want to worry. On weekends, we used to walk in the park. We used to sit by the lake. We used to laugh and talk for hours. But that stopped. He started staying in bed all day. He said he was tired. Sometimes he went out without me. He said he was meeting a friend. He never told me who. He never said where. I stayed home alone. I cleaned the flat and made food. I waited for him to come back. One day I washed his clothes. I checked his pockets. In one jacket, I found a hotel receipt. My hands froze. My heart started to beat fast. The hotel was not near our home. The time was late at night. I felt cold. I stared at the paper for a long time. I wanted to believe it was work. I wanted to trust him. I put the paper in my drawer and said nothing. After that, I started watching him more. He took his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. He never left it alone. He changed his phone password. I did not ask why. I just watched. He started wearing new shirts. He put on cologne every day, even when he said he was only going to the shop. He looked in the mirror more. He smiled at himself. He brushed his hair with care. At night, he turned his back to me. He looked at his phone for hours. He smiled at the screen. I lay next to him, awake. I stared at the wall. I tried not to cry. I asked myself many questions. Was I imagining things? Was I too sensitive? But the truth stayed in my heart. One evening he came home very late. I waited and waited. I called him many times. He did not answer. I looked at the clock. It was midnight. Then it was 1. Then 2. I sat by the window. I watched the road. I felt something heavy in my chest. I did not cry. I felt frozen. He came home after sunrise. He said his car broke down. He said he slept at a friend's house. I smiled. I said nothing, but inside, something broke. I no longer believed his words. I felt like a stranger in my own home. That week I found a bracelet in his bag. It was not mine. I did not know whose it was. It was small and shiny. It smelled like perfume, a sweet smell I never wore. I put it back where I found it. I sat on the bed in silence. I did not know what to do. My days became gray. I went to work like a robot. I answered phones. I smiled at people. But my heart was not there. My manager asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. I was more than tired. I was sad, scared, and lost. At home, I cleaned and cooked. I watched Thomas walk in and out. He gave short answers. He laughed at his phone. He left his plate half full. He said he had no time. He said he was late. He said he had to go. Always go. One Sunday morning, I sat in the kitchen. I held a cup of tea. The tea got cold. I did not drink it. The window was open. I heard birds. I saw kids playing. I saw families walking together. I felt alone, though I was married. I felt like I was living with a ghost. That night, he dressed up again. A clean shirt, polished shoes, the same cologne. He said he had a quick trip. I asked no questions. I only nodded. He smiled and left. I looked out the window. I watched his car disappear. I sat on the sofa for a long time. I did not turn on the TV. I did not eat. I just sat in silence. My heart beat slowly. My eyes were dry. I was tired of crying. I was tired of hoping. I was tired of lies. I went to the drawer and took out the hotel receipt. I looked at it again. I placed the bracelet next to it. I looked at both. My hands were cold. My body felt weak. But my mind was clear. I knew something now. I could not lie to myself. That evening I wrote in my journal. I wrote down every small thing. The hotel paper, the late nights, the perfume, the bracelet, the cold looks, the secret smiles. I wrote it all. When I finished, I closed the book. I sat still. The next morning I woke up early. I did not make tea. I did not prepare breakfast. I stood by the window. The sun was soft. The road was quiet. I felt ready. I was not afraid anymore. I had no proof of his words, but I had proof in my heart. Thomas came out of the room. He looked at me. I looked back. He said nothing. I said nothing. The silence between us was loud. It told me more than words. That day I made a decision. I needed to know the full truth. I could not stay in the dark. I would not pretend anymore. I was ready to find out who my husband really was. I was ready, even if the truth hurt me. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next morning I felt calm. I made no breakfast. I sat on the bed and thought. The house was quiet. Thomas had already left. I listened to the clock on the wall. The ticking sound filled the room. I sat still for a long time. I looked at the bracelet again. I opened my drawer and saw the receipt. My hands felt cold, but my heart felt ready. I needed answers now. I needed to know what was real. I had waited too long. I had cried enough. That day I stayed home. I called work and said I was sick. I looked at the calendar. I looked at the clock. I made a plan in my mind. I would not follow him. I would not ask him. I would find the truth on my own. I remembered the name of the hotel. It was written clearly on the paper. I searched for it online. I saw the address. I saw pictures of the building. I looked at the name again and again. It was not near our area. I left the house quietly. I took the bus to the other side of the town. I walked slowly. I looked at each street. The hotel was tall. It had glass windows and a shiny door. My feet stopped in front of it. I stood there for a few minutes. People came and went. Some laughed. Some held hands. I watched the door open and close. I felt my heart beat fast, but I did not move. I stood still like a statue. I went inside. The air smelled like flowers and perfume. The floor was shiny. The lights were soft. There was music playing in the background. I looked at the front desk. A young woman stood behind it. She smiled at the guests. I looked away. I walked past the lobby. I saw a sitting area with chairs and a coffee table. I sat down. I looked at my phone. I pretended to scroll. But I watched the people. I watched the elevator. I waited. After some time, a woman came down. She wore a red dress and high heels. She smiled at someone on her phone. She looked happy. Then a man followed behind her. He looked around before stepping out. My heart stopped for a second. It was Thomas, my husband. I looked down quickly. I turned my face. I held my phone with both hands. My fingers felt stiff. I could not breathe for a moment. He walked with the woman. They laughed. They walked outside together. I stayed in my seat. I did not move. My body felt frozen. My eyes burned, but I did not cry. I sat in silence for a long time. I left the hotel after some time. I walked down the street. I did not feel the wind. I did not hear the cars. I just walked. My steps were slow. My head was heavy. My legs felt weak, but I kept moving. I reached home before him. I sat at the kitchen table. I did not eat. I did not drink. I just sat and waited. I looked at the walls. I looked at my hands. I felt nothing. I felt empty inside. He came home later that night. He said nothing. He walked into the room. He changed his clothes. He acted like everything was normal, but nothing was normal for me anymore. Nothing felt the same. The next few days I stayed quiet. I acted like before. I made tea. I made dinner. I cleaned the house. But inside, I was broken. I knew what I saw. I could not forget it. I kept thinking about the woman, her red dress, her smile, the way she walked beside him, the way he looked at her, the way he smiled. It was the same smile he once gave to me. I looked at the photos from our wedding. I looked at his face in those pictures. He looked so happy. He looked proud. I remembered how he held my hand, how he promised a good life. But now he gave that smile to someone else. Each day I felt smaller. I felt like a shadow. I was there, but not seen. I was alive, but not living. I cooked food, but I could not eat. I cleaned, but I could not rest. I tried to sleep, but I could not close my eyes. He still left the house every evening. He said it was work. He said the roads were busy. He said clients needed night trips. I said nothing. I just listened. I no longer believed anything. I stopped caring about the house. I stopped folding clothes. I stopped watering the plant by the window. The leaves turned brown. The flowers dropped. It looked just like me, tired and forgotten. One day, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes had dark circles. My face looked pale. My hair was messy. I did not look like the Eliza I once was. I felt like I had lost myself. I did not recognize the woman in the glass. I sat on the bed and opened my journal. I read my old words. I saw the love I had for him. I saw the dreams I once had. I wanted a family. I wanted a future. But now, I had only silence and secrets. I thought about the truth. I had seen it with my own eyes. I had the paper. I had the bracelet. I had the memory of him and the woman at the hotel. That was enough. I needed no more proof. The truth was clear. I stood up and opened my closet. I looked at my clothes. I touched my suitcase. My hands were steady. My heart was still. I felt no fear. I felt only peace. I knew what I had to do next. I sat at the table and wrote a short note. I kept my words simple. I did not ask questions. I did not blame. I only said what was true. I folded the paper and placed it on the bed. I packed my clothes in silence. I folded my old sweater. I placed my shoes in the bag. I looked around the room one last time. I took a deep breath. I walked out of the flat. Outside, the sky was dark, but I felt light. The wind touched my face. I looked up at the stars. For the first time in many weeks, I smiled. I did not know where I would go, but I knew I could not stay. I walked down the road, my bag in my hand, my heart still full of pain, but also full of strength. I left behind the lies. I left behind the nights full of silence. I walked into a new day. I walked into a new life. I walked through the dark streets with my bag. My steps were slow. My body was tired. The wind was cold, but I kept going. I did not cry. I only looked at the road. I just wanted to keep walking. I wanted to go far away from everything. I reached the bus stop near the market. I sat on the bench. I placed my bag on the ground. The night was quiet. I looked up at the sky. There were no stars, only clouds and darkness. I looked at my hands. They were shaking a little. I felt cold, but it was not just the wind. Then it happened. My chest hurt. My eyes filled with tears. I tried to stop, but I could not. I put my hands over my face. I cried quietly. I cried for all the days I stayed silent. I cried for the nights I waited. I cried for the love that felt lost. I cried because I still loved him. I wiped my face with my scarf. I looked at the road again. I felt something deep inside. I thought about our wedding day. I thought about our first apartment. I remembered his laugh, his eyes, his warm hands. I remembered the man I married. He was still my husband. My heart felt heavy, but also full. I had walked away. I had been strong, but now I wanted to go back. I wanted to try one more time. I did not want to leave with anger. I wanted to know I had done everything I could. I stood up from the bench. I picked up my bag. I turned around. I started walking home. My steps were slow, but they were sure. The sky was still dark, but something inside me felt different. When I reached the door, I stood still. My hand touched the key. I waited for a few seconds. Then I opened the door slowly. The room was dark. I placed my bag near the wall. I looked around. Everything was the same, but I felt like a different person. I did not wake him. I sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at his face in the soft light. He was asleep. He looked tired. He looked older than before. My heart ached, but I also felt calm. The next morning, I made tea. I placed a cup on the table for him. He sat down without a word. I looked at him and said nothing, but inside, I was speaking. I wanted to tell him I was hurt. I wanted to ask why, but I also wanted to say I was still here. In the days that followed, I stayed. I cooked simple food. I cleaned the house. I did not speak much. I watched him carefully. He did not smile like before. He did not leave the house at night. He sat in the living room and watched old films. He looked at me sometimes. I looked back. There were no words between us. But there was something. Maybe it was pain. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was hope. I didn't know, but I felt it. I did not ask where he had been. I did not talk about the woman or the hotel. I kept those thoughts in my journal. I wrote in silence each night. I wrote down my feelings. I wrote my dreams. I wrote my fears. I told myself I would try. I would not forgive quickly, but I would try to understand. I would try to remind him of what we had. I would try to bring back the good things. Some days were hard. I felt weak. I felt sad. I wanted to run again, but I stayed. I walked with him to the shop one day. We bought bread and milk. He carried the bag. I walked beside him. We did not talk much, but we were side by side again. One morning, he made me tea. He placed it on the table. Then he walked away. I looked at the cup. I held it in my hands. I felt the warmth. It was a small thing, but it meant something. Maybe he was trying too. I cleaned the bedroom. I opened the windows. I changed the sheets. I washed our clothes. I moved through the house slowly. I moved with care. I touched each object like it was part of our past. At night, I sat beside him on the sofa. We watched a film together. I did not cry. I did not ask questions. I only sat near him. He looked at me once. Our eyes met for a second. Then we both looked away. The silence between us was still there, but it was not cold now. It was quiet, but not empty. It held something soft, something that might grow. I did not know what the future would bring. I did not know if he would change. I did not know if I would heal. But I knew one thing. I had chosen to try. Trying did not mean forgetting. Trying did not mean accepting lies. It meant standing up every day. It meant showing love even when it hurt. It meant hoping for change, but not waiting forever. I looked at the photo on our shelf. It was from our first year of marriage. We were both smiling. We looked young and full of dreams. I touched the frame and closed my eyes. I whispered to myself, I am still here. I folded the laundry and placed it in the drawer. I made rice and vegetables for lunch. I swept the floor. I did not feel strong every moment, but I did not feel broken either. The days passed slowly. Some felt warm, some felt heavy, but each day I kept trying. I watched Thomas with quiet eyes. I looked for signs of change. I waited for small moments of care. I did not know if he would become the man he once was. I did not know if I would trust him again, but I gave space for a new story. A story that was still being written. The nights were still quiet, but now they were not filled with tears. I watched the moon through the window. I held my cup of tea. I sat on the sofa and breathed deeply. I was not the same woman who stood at the bus stop. I was not the same woman who ran away. I was a woman who came back. I came back because I believed love should be given every chance. I did not know the ending yet. Maybe it would be good. Maybe it would hurt again. But for now, I was here. I was trying. And sometimes trying was enough. My name is Anna. I am 28 years old. I live in the United States. I work at a local bakery. Every morning, I wake up early, put on my apron, and walk to the shop. I help make the bread, slice the cakes, and serve coffee to the customers. It's not a big place, but it's warm and full of sweet smells. I like my job. It keeps me busy, and I enjoy seeing the same friendly faces every day. For a long time, my life was very quiet. I worked in the bakery, I went home, and sometimes I visited my mother on Sundays. She lives in a small town, just 1 hour away. I don't have many friends, and I didn't have a boyfriend. My days were simple and always the same. Wake up, work, go home, sleep. Some people would call that boring, but I didn't mind. I told myself that peace was better than pain. Then, one morning, everything started to change. A new manager joined the bakery team. His name was Michael. He was 31, 3 years older than me. He had short brown hair, clear blue eyes, and a smile that made people feel welcome. He wasn't loud or full of himself. He was calm and confident. The other girls at the bakery noticed him right away. They laughed more when he was around. They asked him questions, even when they didn't need help. I tried not to look at him too much. I didn't think someone like him would ever notice someone like me. I was just Anna. I wore plain jeans and simple shirts. I kept my hair in a ponytail, and I never wore makeup. I didn't have anything special. I was just good at my job. But one day, after I helped an angry customer with a smile, Michael came to me and said, "You're really patient." That was impressive. I thanked him, but inside my heart jumped. He had noticed me. After that, we started talking more. Not long conversations, just little moments here and there. He asked how my morning was. He told me when he liked how I arranged the display. He laughed at my small jokes. His kindness was soft, not loud. He didn't try too hard. That made it feel real. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly I started to look forward to work in a new way. I found myself thinking about what to wear, even if I kept it simple. I looked in the mirror a bit longer before leaving the house. I smiled more. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Sometimes he would bring in a coffee for me when he went out during break. Sometimes he stayed back to clean up when he didn't have to. When we had quiet mornings, we talked about little things, books we liked, food we hated, the music playing in the shop. I learned he had a dog named Max. I told him about my mother and her flower garden. It was small talk, but it felt big to me. It felt personal. One Friday evening, just before closing, he said, "Do you have plans this weekend?" I shook my head. "Want to see a movie?" he asked, almost too casually. I paused, unsure what he meant. Then I nodded. "Sure," I said. That Sunday, we met at the small theater downtown. We watched a funny film and laughed more than we talked. Afterward, we walked by the river and shared a warm pretzel. He told me about his high school days and his dreams of owning his own bakery one day. I told him about how I used to draw when I was younger, but stopped. He said I should start again. That night when I went to bed, I smiled in the dark. My chest felt light. I hadn't felt that way in years. The next week, he acted the same. Kind, warm, gentle. Nothing changed. And that made me feel safe. I started to believe that maybe something real was beginning. Something honest. Something mine. But I was wrong. One quiet morning, just as I was finishing a tray of muffins, Michael came into the kitchen. His face looked different. Tense. Serious. I wiped my hands on my apron and asked if something was wrong. He looked at the floor for a second, then back at me. "Anna," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." I didn't speak. I just waited. "I'm married," he said. I blinked. I didn't understand the words at first. Then they sank in. Married. The word hit my chest like a heavy stone. He quickly added, "Her name is Laura. We've been married for 5 years. But we're not happy. We've grown apart. We don't talk like we used to. We don't connect." I felt cold all over. My hands were shaking, but I tried not to show it. He kept talking, his voice lower now, like he was trying to explain something to himself more than to me. "When I'm with you," he said, "I feel alive. I feel like myself. I haven't felt that in years." I didn't answer. I couldn't. That night, I went home and cried. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't turn on the TV. I just sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. I asked myself, why didn't he tell me before? Why did he let me believe something sweet was real? Why did he come so close if he was already someone else's? 2 days later, I went to the big supermarket after work. I needed bread and milk, but my mind was far away. As I walked down the frozen food aisle, I heard a voice. I turned my head, and there he was, Michael. He wasn't alone. He was walking beside a tall, elegant woman. She wore a light green coat and black boots. Her hair was soft and golden. She laughed, and her hand touched his arm. He smiled back at her. They looked perfect. I couldn't move. I just stood there and watched them pass. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did and just pretended not to. Either way, I left the store without buying anything. That night I cried again. But this time, the tears were different. They weren't soft. They were angry. I felt used. I felt like I was only there to make him feel better. Like I didn't matter. How could he tell me he felt close to me, and then walk through the store smiling beside his wife? Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next day at the bakery, everything looked the same. The bread was rising. The coffee was hot. The customers stood in line like always. But nothing felt the same to me. When Michael walked in, I didn't smile. I didn't even look at him at first. I just focused on my hands, wiping the counter over and over again, even though it was already clean. He stood near me for a moment, then quietly said my name. I didn't answer. He waited, then said it again, a little softer. This time, I looked up. I wanted to shout at him. I wanted to ask him why he had done this to me. But my voice didn't work. My chest felt too tight. So instead I just said, "We need to talk." He looked surprised, maybe even worried. I walked to the back of the bakery, to the small room where we kept the extra flour. He followed me. The room was quiet. I could hear my heart beating. I told him I saw him at the supermarket. I told him I saw him with his wife. I told him they looked happy. I said I didn't understand anything anymore. He didn't try to deny it. He didn't get angry. He just looked down at his shoes and stayed silent for a long time. Then he said, "I'm sorry." But sorry didn't feel like enough. It didn't fix the hole in my chest. It didn't take back the nights I stayed awake thinking about him. It didn't change the fact that I had started to believe in something, and now that belief felt broken. He said he wasn't happy with Laura. He said they had problems. He said he didn't feel like himself around her anymore. He said he didn't plan to get close to me. It just happened. That hurt even more, because I hadn't just happened. I had been careful. I had been patient. I had trusted the small, soft moments. And now I felt like I was just something that filled a space in his life when it felt empty. I didn't know what to say to him, so I just told him I needed time. He nodded, but I could see the look in his eyes. He was afraid I would walk away. And maybe I should have walked away that very moment. But I didn't. Not yet. For the next few days, I stayed quiet. I worked my shifts, served the customers, and cleaned the tables. I avoided him as much as I could. But his presence was still there. In the air, in the smell of his coffee, in the space beside me when I turned to say something and realized I didn't want to anymore. At night, I went home and sat in silence. I didn't turn on the lights right away. I didn't cook dinner. I just sat there thinking, what did I want? Did I want to fight for someone who already belonged to someone else? Did I want to believe he would leave his wife? And if he did leave her, would I ever feel sure he wouldn't one day do the same to me? I needed answers, but no one could give them to me, not even him. So I talked to someone who always told me the truth, my best friend Sarah. Sarah and I had been friends since school. She was smart, strong, and never afraid to speak her mind. We met at a small diner after work. I didn't even have to say much. She could see the sadness on my face. When I told her everything, she didn't get angry. She didn't judge. She just listened. Then she looked me straight in the eye and said something I will never forget. "Anna," she said, "you deserve someone who chooses you from the beginning, not someone who keeps you in the shadows. Don't settle for half of someone's heart." I nodded, but her words hurt. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. That night, I didn't cry. For the first time, I didn't feel weak. I felt something stronger, clarity. The next evening, I texted Michael. I told him I wanted to meet him at the park near the bakery. It was quiet there, with trees and wooden benches. A good place to say things that are hard to say. He arrived on time. I was already sitting, looking at the ducks in the pond. He sat beside me, silent at first. I took a deep breath. I told him I cared about him. I told him that what we had felt real, for me at least. But I also told him I couldn't live in confusion. I couldn't keep waiting, wondering, hoping for a future that didn't belong to me. He didn't try to stop me. He just listened. When I finished, he looked sad. He said he understood. He said he didn't want to hurt me anymore. We said goodbye, not with anger, but with something softer, maybe respect, maybe regret. As I walked home, the air felt cold, but my heart felt clearer than it had in weeks. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing. I had made the right choice. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. I opened the window and took a deep breath. The sky was gray, and the streets were still wet from rain. But something inside me felt steady. Not happy, not yet, but steady. At the bakery, I worked like I always did. I focused on the dough, the customers, the sweet smell of cinnamon. Michael wasn't there that day. I didn't ask why. Some of the other girls whispered. Maybe they had noticed the change between us. Maybe they guessed. I didn't say anything. It was my story, and I didn't need to explain it to anyone. That afternoon, I walked home slowly. I passed a little bookstore and went inside. I hadn't done that in a long time. I bought a small sketchbook and a pencil. I remembered how I used to love drawing. I didn't know if I was still good at it, but I wanted to try. Back home, I made tea and sat by the window. I opened the sketchbook and let my hand move. I didn't think. I just drew. Maybe life wasn't perfect. Maybe love wasn't easy. But I was still here. I was still me. And that was a good place to start again. The weeks that followed were quiet, but they were different. I started to feel like a new person. I didn't wake up thinking about Michael anymore. I didn't look at my phone, waiting for his name to appear. I stopped hoping for messages that never came. Instead, I woke up thinking about my day, my small joys, and the quiet things I had forgotten I loved. I still worked at the bakery. Life didn't change all at once, but little by little, I did. I walked to work with music in my ears. I baked with more care. I even smiled at the regular customers who used to annoy me. My hands didn't shake anymore when I passed by the shelf where Michael kept his notes. I didn't feel nervous when someone mentioned his name. He was still around sometimes, but we didn't speak much. Just polite smiles, nothing more. That was enough. One rainy afternoon, I walked into a bookstore again. The sketchbook I bought weeks ago was already half full. Drawing helped me feel calm. It gave me something to look forward to in the evening. At the store, I found a book about painting with watercolors. I bought it, along with a small set of brushes. It felt good to give something to myself. I started painting on Sundays. Just soft colors, flowers, trees, cups of tea. Nothing special. But it made me feel light inside, like I was putting pieces of myself back together. One evening, I was painting by the window when my mother called. She asked how I was doing. I told her the truth. I was okay. She said she was proud of me. She didn't ask many questions, but I knew she could hear the change in my voice. She always could. A few days later, something unexpected happened. I received a message from Michael. It was short. He said he wanted to talk. He said there were things he needed to say. I didn't reply right away. I sat with the message for a full day. Then I decided to meet him. Not because I was still waiting, but because I wanted to hear it and then move on. We met at the same park as before. The trees were full of yellow leaves and the sky was a soft gray. I wore my old blue coat. I brought no expectations with me. Michael looked tired, not just on the outside, but deep in his eyes. He sat down beside me, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Then he said something I didn't expect. He said he had told his wife the truth, that he had feelings for someone else, that the marriage had been broken for a long time. He said he didn't blame me for walking away. He said he respected it. Then he said, "You were the only honest thing I had in a long time." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't ask for another chance. He just said thank you for making him feel again, for helping him see what he had become. We said goodbye with no promises, no hopes, just words we both needed to say. After that day, I didn't hear from him again. I focused on myself. I kept painting. I started reading more. I joined a weekend art class at the local library. The room was quiet, and the people were kind. We painted together, and nobody asked too many questions. It felt like a fresh start. One morning, a man from the class smiled at me. His name was Daniel. He taught music at a school nearby. We talked a little after class. First about art, then about books, and then about life. He was gentle and calm, like a soft breeze. We didn't rush. We talked for many weeks before we met outside the class. One Saturday, we got coffee at a small cafe. He asked about my paintings. I asked about his students. We laughed about silly things and didn't talk about the past. I didn't tell him everything right away. I wasn't ready, but over time, I opened up, and he listened. Not with judgment, just with care. One evening, I sat by the window and thought about how far I had come. A few months ago, I cried every night. I felt like I was only enough when someone else looked at me with love. But now, I didn't need anyone to show me my worth. I knew it myself. Love had hurt me, yes, but it had also taught me. It showed me the difference between attention and care, between being needed and being valued. And now, as I looked at my reflection in the window, I didn't see someone broken. I saw someone strong, someone who walked away when it was hard, someone who chose peace over promises that came too late. Daniel and I are still just friends. Maybe something more will grow in time, or maybe it won't. But I'm okay either way, because for the first time, I feel whole on my own. If someone had told me back then that I would thank the pain one day, I wouldn't have believed them. But now I understand. The heartbreak didn't destroy me. It brought me back to myself. And that, to me, is the real love story.